Welcome to TheGunBlog.ca. My name is Nicholas Johnson. Today, my special guest is Donovan Dewis. He is the publisher of Canadian Access to Firearms. Hi, Donovan. Welcome.
Hey, Nick. How you doing today?
Really good, really good. Really good to have you on. And we're going to talk about the origins of the paper, its role in the shooting community and the gun media ecosystem, we'll call it, the landscape, and about the future. I'm really excited to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I came across Canadian Access to Firearms because I was talking to someone and they mentioned it as like I don't know if they use the word Bible, but it's one of the longest longest standing gun newspapers in the country, in Canada. And as basically a must have, a must reference. You're not part of the shooting community unless you get this publication. Anyway, just basically the guy with the glowing. And this was a person in the firearm industry.
Yep.
And so I'm really happy to have you here as the publisher to tell us about Canadian Access to Firearms. How do you see the mission of CATF?
Well, like I said, we are the only buy and sell newspaper across Canada. We like to bring, forth all the stuff that's going on in the firearms world as much as we can. When Paul started the paper, he started it 37 years ago. And the reason why he started the paper back then was because he wanted a platform that he could actually view his ideas and his complaints against, going against the gun control and all that kind of stuff. So he wanted a platform where he could publish this stuff because he wasn't getting any. He kept trying to write letters to the editors and stuff like this, and it really wasn't going anywhere. So between him and a gentleman named Stuart Smith, they got together, and Stuart basically financed it. Paul did all the work to it, and Canadian Access to Firearms was born. With their first issue, I wish I had a copy of the first issue. I don't even know what it looked like. I've got copies of the older stuff, but yeah, and that's how it got started, and away he went.
And what's really interesting to me also is just on the website now. It's to be also for people who may not be familiar with the paper. It's a paper, and do you have a copy that you can hold up on screen here? Yeah, it's there you go. Yeah, so open it up. I think it's halfway folded. Yeah, so it's
I should go like this.
So so there's a copy of the paper. It's a newspaper. It does have a website. The website is CanadianGuns.com. And just to riff off what you were saying, it's like when you look at about the About Us section, it's pretty opinionated. You're not aiming to be some kind of neutral something or other. No, you've got a pretty strong. There's some pretty strong opinions in there, and I guess that comes from Paul Rogan, the founder.
A lot of that came from Paul. I never, when I took over July 1st of 2018, I never changed a thing with that. Anything that he had written there is exactly the way he wrote. That's exactly how he felt, and that still stands today with the paper. We don't change that motto. It's still there. The fact that we are still in newspaper form. Other than the fact, if you look at some of the earlier issues, they were a little bit smaller because of where he used to get it printed. He used to get it printed here in the Yukon at one point, and they actually use a smaller size. Other than that, it got a little bit longer. We've always been in newspaper form, always. And like I said, mottos are still there today.
And I also want to talk more about your relationship with Paul, how you got to know him, how you got to take over the paper. And I just want to start, though, by acknowledging my respects to him. He passed away very recently, about a month ago, and my respects to him and his family and his friends. We were very close. You and he were very close.
Yes, we were.
Okay. I also want to say that I had the chance. I'm just going to put this up on screen here. I had the chance to meet Paul. Christopher D'Armani made the connection. I was going up. I was living in Toronto at the time and driving up to Whitehorse for a visit, and he said, "Oh my gosh, if you're going to Whitehorse, you got to meet Paul Rogan." And it's one of those. Meeting him, we had coffee at Starbucks with Doug from Teslin. Yep. And it was one of those meetings that for me was a before and after moment in terms of hearing this guy at Starbucks talking about his background and the stuff he's done and about his daughter. It was just incredible. So we wrote that up, but you can see the date there. Tell me about your relationship with Paul.
Well, I met Paul when I was about 11 or 12. I met him through a mutual friend named Mike. he used to work. He used to work at the local Woolco store here. And as a kid, I used to go in there, and I had a friend. Her name was Sylvie. She used to work in the toy department, and then she used to work in the hardware department. So when my grandmother brought me downtown, I'd go in the toy department. I'd be pricing toys and stuff. And then when she moved over to the hardware department over there and help her put stuff on the shelves, it kept me busy. And I met Mike there. He was their head stock boy, and then through as I was getting older, I ended up working there as a janitor for a couple hours a night. When I was 12, I used to go in there and clean the kitchen and stuff for him. And then from there, I really got to know Mike. And then through Mike, I met Paul. So I would go over to Paul's place when I was young and see what he was doing. He'd be right in the middle of the paper or something, or he'd be doing something. I mean, he'd normally answer all my questions, but if I was basically being a pain in the ass, he'd tell me, get out the door, he's done, I'm busy, kind of thing. But that's how I met Paul. So then through that, I just kept it rolling. I mean, I'd just go over and I'd go see him, and as I got older, I'd still go over to see him, go because he had his gunsmithing shop over there. I'd go talk to him and stuff like this, and then of course, as my relationship grew with Mike, it also grew with Paul, and then we just kept on going that way, and then because Mike had moved away, he moved down to Vancouver at some point, and then I stayed up here, and then eventually I moved down to Victoria, and I still kept in contact with Paul the whole time. And every year I came back for Christmas, it was always our routine that the very first breakfast. So I get back on let's say a Tuesday, Wednesday morning, very first time, me and him always go for breakfast. That was the thing we always did. And then of course we did that for 10 years while I was down in Victoria. And then when I moved back here, then we did stuff all the time together and things like that. So, I mean, I knew Paul for an awful long time. I mean, he was a very, and still is a very close friend of mine.
It's interesting you put that in the present tense.
I'll be honest with you. It sounds funny. I can't talk in the past tense on him. I really can't. I find it too hard. I'd rather just talk in the present.
Got it. And when I'm just trying to line up the dates. You said that started when you were around 11 or thereabouts. And so you're almost as old as CATF. I'm projecting here, but maybe not quite entirely, but or let me rephrase that. You've known Paul about as long as he's been doing CATF.
Pretty much. Like I said, when I used to go in as a kid and actually see him working on the paper, I mean, he'd have a real small computer screen there, because when he first started, he had to go down to the local Yukon News here, or sorry, White Horse Star, and he would use their computers there. They allowed him to go down there to do it. He'd have to print each word out at a time, and then it'd come out in a great big long tape, and he'd take that and he'd cut each word up, and he'd have to paste it all on boards to get it all put together, and then he'd ship that off to the printer. And I saw some of those processes, and then as I got older, I'd see him. He'd have his little computer screen. So I mean, now I've got a 27-inch screen sitting in front of me. I think some of the first screens were only like 10-inch big or something. He'd be working on this little screen, punching away at his computer. And even then, as a kid, I thought, that would be a really interesting job to have. That would be really cool. And I said, yeah, I could see myself doing this. And I thought back then that would be an interesting job to have.
And I'm just doing some dates around here. Would that be like early 90s?
That would be, that would be almost, actually, that would be probably late 80s.
Okay.
It started in 84. So this would be probably late 80s, possibly early 90s.
Okay. When did you get the something that you'd be taking over the paper?
Well, when I moved back, the very second I had moved back, and even over the course of the time, we had kind of talked about me taking over. But when I moved back, we started doing some seriously talking about it. And we talked about it for, probably 10 years. So it was a serious talk for 10 years. And when I was working I was working at Metro Chrysler, and I came over there, our first initial try, I'd come over a couple hours every couple days. I'd come over for a couple hours to learn some stuff about the paper and do some work on the computers and stuff like this. But eventually, between work and the fact that the paper's only on for such a small time span, trying to learn anything didn't work very good. So we kind of gave that up. We said, okay, if we're going to do this, we're going to have to go full hog to do it. And I said, well, I really can't do it at this point because of my other obligations. I'm working. You were trying to buy a house, the whole 9 yards. And so we kind of gave that up at that time. We still talked about it. And then he had both his son and his daughter. They worked with him on it for a little bit, and it just came down to that didn't do exactly what they wanted to do. And then we had talked about some more, and then he had some other buyers come in there at the same time when I was busy talking to him. And then eventually I just said to my wife, I said, well, he's got a buyer. He's going to go down there and see this person. He was going to down to Chilliwack. And she said, well, we should just tell him we want to take it, and that's it. So I rung him up, and he'd already had his plane ticket booked. And I said, look, if those guys don't go through, we'll do it. And he said, okay. He went down there to the meeting. It didn't go through. He came back. He said, if you want it, you got it. So it took me a year to get the bank loan for it, because I didn't want to waste anybody's time. So I told the bank, I said, hey, I want to know that you guys can do this loan, because the first place I went was to BDC, but due to the nature content of the paper, they weren't willing to finance it.
BDC is the government-owned
No,
business development bank. Is that right?
Is that the government? Okay, well, BDC, or the business better.
Okay, maybe it's a different organization. Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was actually a private bank.
Okay.
So anyway, because at one point in time, I was going to buy the Snap-on dealership here in town before Canadian Access, before I kind of made the whole that we were going to do it. And I went through BDC for that, and within 2 hours they had the loan like right there. This is what it's going to cost, everything like that. Bang, have a nice day. When I went through this, I had to wait 4 days for him to get back to me, so I knew it wasn't going to be good. And then he had suggested, well, why don't you try your local bank? So I went through the local bank, and she did a really good job. It took us quite a while because we had to come up with all our documentation and stuff like this. And eventually they said, okay, great, we'll do it. So, between the bank, between Paul, and between the money that me and my wife had put down, we were able to do the deal, and away we went.
And what year did you officially become the owner?
July 1st, 2018. I was actually supposed to be June 1st of 2018. But a lot of people know that's right when we lost the June issue. Because during that time, Paul was that's when he started having his heart problems, and they put a defibrillator in his chest. So he went down, had the defibrillator put in, came back. And when he came back to the office, I was busy in the office talking to him because we were just going over a few things and how things were going to run. And as he was in the office, he was looking grayer and grayer and grayer. And I was like, oh man, you don't look so good. And he said, yeah. He said, I'm just going to get this issue through, and then I'm going to go see the doctor because I'm not feeling too good and stuff. But he didn't make it that far. He ended up they put him on a plane, and they sent him down to Vancouver. And what they had done is they poked a hole in one of his veins in his heart when they put the defibrillator in. So of course he was bleeding out. They drained off like 4 liters of blood off of his chest, or a massive amount off of his chest. And then he simply, and that's when we lost the June issue. He combined the July and the June issue together that year. And even then he was phoning me up. He said, look, do you still want to do this? He says, I don't know where this is going. And I said, yeah, no, we're in. Let's just do this. Let's see where it goes. And then he came back, and we just put our contract ahead 1 month, and July 1st I was in the office. And I walked in right at the because we're always a month in advance. I walked in right in the August issue. So, I mean, they had already been working on it for a week. I walk in halfway through because technically we start work on the 25th till about the 11th. I walk in, and I just sat there in the chair for like 10 days, said, oh my God, what did I get myself into? Because I mean, but they were just all working around, getting this whole thing. And I mean, that issue, I do believe, booked out at 88 pages or 90 pages or something like, no, not 88. I think that one booked out at 88 pages.
And what's a typical issue?
Well, back then, see, when I took over, our typical issue was 48 pages. It wasn't till because I mean, again, I was learning all the nuts and bolts. So that year, that August issue was the biggest one Paul had ever done. And I was busy learning all the nuts and bolts. Near the end of the year, because I had a year's contract with Paul that he was going to show me the ropes and all this kind of stuff. And near the end of the contract, we did a 52, and then I did a 56-page paper. Then in 2019, we were doing an average of about 64. 2020, we were doing about the same. It started creeping up. As it stands now, our biggest issue, which was 2021, was the August issue. We booked out at 112 pages. And since then onward, I've been doing 88 pages straight. I did the last issue booked out at 92. The
So
ones running up to that was like I had two 64s, and then we did a 70, we did a 72, and then we did a 76, and then it hit, and it just, we haven't stopped. We're just giving her.
and what I'm really struck by in what you're sharing, like there's so much here I want to dig into, is I'm going to, so like any small business, and the proof of what you just said, Paul really put his heart into it. And like any entrepreneur, with something I don't really think about for some reason, even though I publish TheGunBlog.ca, and you publish CATF, and there's also Caliber and some other Canadian Firearms Journal by the National Firearms Association. Each of these, I assume, is also an entrepreneurial project. They're not all the same, but we kind of forget that people are pouring their blood and guts and their soul, in some cases more literally than others. But this is like, it's the entrepreneurial journey, whether you're a solopreneur or a small business employing other people. It's for some people, it's their life. It's our lives. Like I don't know about you. I assume you spend a lot of time on CATF.
Oh, I do. I spend, my phone. I'm a firm believer in I don't like answering machines unless I'm out of town. So, I mean, my phone is 24/7. I mean, I've had subscribers phone me up at 9 o'clock at night wanting to renew, thinking that they're going to talk to a machine. And I pick up the phone and say, "Hey, how can I help you?" And they go, "Yeah, I just want to renew." And the first question is, "What are you doing answering the phone?" I said, "Well,
I think I got a text from you a couple nights ago. Was preparing for this conversation. Like it was 3 a.m. my time, so it was like, yeah. So, so people, I think that's also good. That people are also surprised when they call me, like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't think I'd get a response." And yes, that's part of, I think, our business ethic and our personal values. We want to be present. We want to be there for our customers. And who are your customers?
Well, essentially, I mean, we've got everybody from like we've got Dante and Browning and Glock, Vortex, Scorpion Optics. I gotta look in my actual paper here if you guys don't mind.
There's so many.
There's so many. We got Vault, and trying to name them all off the top of my head. So basically, in the paper, we've got everything from the big guys down to the mom and pop guys, all the way down to the guy who just wants to sell a 303 Enfield. We've got everything from A to Z is in there. So if you're looking for something from Glock, you're going to find it. If you're looking for something from your local gun store like Alberta Firearms, you're going to find it in there. If you're looking for, I'm just looking for this one particular item, you're going to find it in the classifieds. I mean, the range of advertisers is just, we've got a huge range of advertisers all the way through there.
And that's one thing that strikes me, that, yeah, you've got everything from the little classified ads, just a couple lines of print, for sale, Remington 700, please call so, like just very, very simple and minimalist, to I remember, well, you got the multi-page spreads, whether it's Dante or Elwood Epps or Wolverine or whatever, these multi-page spreads by what I would call the big independents.
Yep.
And you also have well, you publish a page from TheGunBlog.ca each issue, for which I'm extremely grateful, helping get the word out. So you have some news and politics and what's happening in the political policy arena, as well as the ads for firearms.
We try to put an average of 4 to 6 pages of editorial content in there. Is what I like to do, because the readers, when I got into it, the subscribers saying, "Hey, we like to see more articles. We want to see more articles." I mean, the one thing I will say, like, I mean, I could never have done this myself. Paul took something from zero to where he took it to, and he worked very hard to get it to that point. I didn't do anything different than what he did. I literally took every principle he told me, and I just hit the pavement running. And I just, because I'm young, younger than he was. I'm hungry because I want to get, I've got bills I've got to pay, the whole nine yards. So I just hit the pavement running, and I brought it to where it is now. And again, there was nothing, I couldn't have done this all by myself. It just wouldn't have happened. I just took his principles, his ideas, his thoughts, and I just made it grow that extra amount, and I think that happens with any business. One person takes it to a certain point, because they've done everything they possibly can. They brought it to a certain point, and as much as we all say we're going to be around here forever, eventually, that's as far as we want to take it, because we've done our part. We've done everything we possibly can. Then somebody else new comes in, takes it over, and they push it to the next level. And you see that many, many different times in all kinds of businesses. And that's all I did. I took his principles and I moved it forward.
I want to talk about principles because I think that's the big thing. That one of the things that struck me also when I met him at that Starbucks back 2017, and also I just want to say that you and I met at TACOM in 2019, the big TACOM tactical and competitive shooting sports show. I'm not sure if that's the exact name, but TACOM, you know what TACOM is. And he one of the things that really struck me is that he had this personal relationship with the advertisers at the time. I don't know if that's the same under you, but at this time he said he had never had a signed contract, that everything was done by word of mouth and handshake. And you had this guy who at his core value believed in personal freedom, personal power, personal responsibility. Your word is your bond. So again, and that really struck me. Holy smokes, here we are in 2017 with the world as it is, and he's still doing things very old school. And I loved it.
We still do business the same way. I mean, when I took over, we didn't even announce it. I wanted everybody to realize that the paper was still going to be the same paper. Other than the fact that it grew, that's all I wanted people to know. I wanted to know that they still had the same service. They still got the same friendly atmosphere. They everything was still your words, your bond. I wanted everybody to realize that was going to stay the same. So when I walked in, we had a choice of either we announce it or we don't announce it. And I said, well, let's just let it run, and away we went. So I just wanted people to realize it was exactly the same. I didn't want anything like that to interfere with it, and that's what we did. I mean, we have no signed contracts. Your word's your word.
And I know from talking with you over the years that you have like a huge part of how you spend your time is not just laying out the paper and getting the ads. It's a personal if you're on the phone with your subscribers and your advertisers a lot.
Yep. Well, it's you get in a conversation with him. You talk to some guy who's just renewing his subscription. You get his views of what's going on over here and how he views the gun laws and the gun bans and this, that, the other deal. You get his views of it. Then I'll talk to somebody else over in another section of Canada, and I'll get their views of it. So you get a mix of everybody, and that's the favorite part of my job. I mean, if somebody phones up, they're renewing their subscription or something, I don't mind getting in a half-hour conversation. Of course, it slows me down, but I don't mind it because I want to hear what they want to say. You get different ideas, what's going on. As well as when I talk to the advertisers, I got a lot of guys there. I mean, when I'm working on getting the material and stuff, I normally make sure I book a certain amount of time because I know that I'm going to be talking to this guy for a while. And I enjoy that. I enjoy getting in the conversations with them. I mean, it's all part and parcel of the project. It's just you just get to know your people. Their ideas, where they're thinking. How they feel about something, what's going on over here. And even through that, you find out more stuff that's happening that you didn't know that was going on. Because I mean, just like you, I don't get a lot of chance to watch the news. I mean, I get, especially since we made it. I mean, I have to schedule if I'm going to watch the news for 2 minutes, that kind of thing. So I don't get a chance to get caught up on everything that's going on. So I get it caught up through my subscribers and my advertisers.
Good. And so there's a personal relationship, like a human way of doing business. There's also fundamental core beliefs about liberty and privacy. And one of the things that you started saying at the very beginning is that Canadian access to firearms is one of the only, or at least a way to buy and sell firearms privately, a transaction between two people. And there's a lot of people who want that. And you want to make sure that like there's a freedom thing here. There's a kind of a libertarian thing here. There's a respect for human individuals. Like what I do with my stuff is nobody else's business. Is those values? I'm paraphrasing what Paul told me back when we met. But what else can you say about the values that drive the paper?
It's like you said, it's private. We all know we go into the internet and they know exactly where you've been every time. This is it's a private way. People can buy their stuff, sell their stuff. There's nobody watching over their shoulder. It's a conversation between one individual to another individual, and they can sell their stuff. They don't have to worry about anything. The deal goes through, and everybody who does a deal, I mean, every deal that goes through is always a good deal. Nothing seems to happen, so it works out very nice that way.
And I'm just gonna jump in here because in case someone's watching from another country or from Canada and you're not familiar, Canada has very strict laws about who's allowed to buy and sell firearms. You need a government issued, as an individual, you need a government issued license. That you need to photo ID and everything as a store. Like there's thousands of stores, but they also need to be government licensed. So it's a highly regulated market, and within that, there's millions, the 2.2 million people who have the license, who are buying and selling from each other. So I just want to, it's not when you say anything, they can do anything they want. It's anything they want within a very tight,
Within the regulations.
within the regulations. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and it's like, and it's just it's a very private way of doing business, and like I said, it works very well.
And why is it important to be private in this day and age when, like you said, everybody knows people are, why is it important? Why is privacy important
Well,
to you, to your advertisers, to your subscribers?
Well, we know just the way things go nowadays. I mean, back in the day, if I went up to the range, I could throw my rifle across my handlebars of my bike, fill my basket full of bullets, and away I'd go up to the range, and I'd have a good day. Now, when I go to when I pack my stuff up for my own gun show, I got to wrap it 6 times so people don't know what I'm bringing out of my house. For some reason, somewhere along the lines, things have changed, and I don't know how it changed or where it changed or what kind of change it just. So you've got to be a little more private on what you're doing. I mean, even when I bring a rifle into my house, it's in a box, or it's in this, or it's very tough nowadays. So privacy is a key factor here. You don't want, people they don't want to know what's going on.
And I'm going to also just echo part of what I do also at the Gun Blog in terms of subscribers. Yeah, I'm in touch with them, and I've discovered their identity through conversations and meetings and stuff, if they want to disclose that. But if you want to subscribe, I don't know your address. I don't know your real name. I don't know anything about you at all. And I want to respect that privacy and anonymity. And if you want to read the Gun Blog, you're welcome to do it. I don't need to know any information about you. And that's important to me. And I've taken measures to go above and beyond privacy and what people click on. I just don't know. And what was there was another thing I wanted to say about that. Maybe it'll come back in a
Well,
second.
I mean, like I said, just in today's, and I mean, it's not so long ago that people didn't lock their doors in Whitehorse, and now everybody locks their door. It's I don't know where things have changed. I mean, I've noticed, and I mean, I'm only 51 years old. Well, I'll be 50 the end of March, and it's changed in such a fast time frame. I mean, I can only imagine, when I'm talking to Paul and stuff, the changes that he felt back from the time he got here till now. It just, everything seems like it's changing.
And you're speaking from Whitehorse. Like I live in Toronto, which probably has the per capita the lowest level of firearm possession per population. Whitehorse, or at least Yukon, has one of the highest in Canada. It's I think just Nunavut is higher, but there's like 3,000 people in Nunavut. But of the, let's call it the larger provinces and territories, Yukon is the top. And I think you don't leave, like, from when I was up there, everybody says, you don't go out of town without a rifle or a shotgun or something in the back of your truck or your car, because for survival, for outdoors, for safety, for whatever. Like, it's so I guess what I mean is you're seeing you're describing what you're seeing about this change in culture, even though you're in the province with the highest level of firearm ownership.
Oh, I know exactly. Like, I mean, we used to drive around all the time. I mean, you'd have your guns hang on the back of your window of your truck, and away you go. It was a common thing. Back in the day, I used to bring my Ruger 1022, and I'd put it in my locker because me and my buddies were going to go rabbit hunting right after school. Teachers, they would talk about their hunting experiences. In fact, one teacher brought his whole class out because he had shot I think it was a caribou or something on the way to school. So I mean, it was so much. It was a different life. It lived a bit of a different lifestyle, and I'm trying to figure out where it changed. It's tough to figure that part out. I don't know. Somewhere along the line, somebody said, "No, we can't do that no more."
I'm going to pitch in here a century of anti-gun brainwashing. I'm just going to put that out there.
You're right there. It's a century brainwashed. It's just.
But I think also, so again, you and I are, by the way, did you grow up, or like, were you a gun guy from when you were in diapers, or did you kind of get into guns, or how did?
I got into guns again. I got in through the guns through Mike and Paul at a young age. I was about again. I think I had my first 22 when I was. You're allowed to get your FAC at 16. That's back in the day. That's when I got my first Ruger 10/22. My grandfather did take me out shooting a few times. We never, when I grew up as a kid, we didn't have any actual firearms in the house. My grandfather, because I grew up with my grandmother and my grandfather. My grandfather was actually a World War II veteran. And now we didn't have guns because he was a war. We just, for some reason, we didn't have anything in the house. And he grew up in Neepawa, Manitoba, so he was always out shooting all the time. But he did borrow some guns from one of his friends. We'd go do some gopher shooting and stuff like this. And then, like I said, I got my first 22 at 16. But talking to Paul and talking to Mike and stuff like this, and just being around that group of people, I'd always go down because at the time Paul was partners in the sports lodge. That's another place I'd go visit with him. I'd go in there because I'd want to see what they have on the rack. I'd say like, "Oh, that looks really neat," or that, and I collect military stuff. So I was always that, maybe that was because I grew up with my grandfather. I always liked the military stuff. So, I'd go in there and I'd look at all the military guns that they had in there. And when I took up too much of their time, then again, they'd tell me to leave because I'm only like, again, 12, 13 at the time looking at all this stuff. But, it was really fascinating. I really like the military stuff. So it was really fascinating for me to look at this stuff and hold it, because you'd read about it in a book or you'd see it, or my grandfather might mention something and I'd be like, oh, okay, yeah. And then I go down and you actually get to hold it in your hand and go, wow, this is really cool. So I really enjoyed that. So, I got into firearms the very second I could myself. In fact, actually I had my grandfather, the very first handgun I ever owned, which was a 9mm Lama. I actually had to have my grandfather buy that because I was underage. So I said, I came up with the money. I told my grandfather, his name was Jack. I said, look, Jack, I want this handgun. I want to buy it. It was the slide flopped all around on it.
Oh, God.
But I said, no, I really want this. And he went down and he bought it under his name, and then we go up to the range and go shoot that because we had to get the permits. He had to get the permits to go up the range and do some shooting and stuff like this. So, but that was, so I guess, like
young, you got into it at a quite like as a young, I guess, as a young boy.
And not to mention, I did do lots of shooting training because I was in the cadets here. I joined them when I was 14. So we did do like every Tuesday night, which is going to sound funny to a lot of people. At the local elementary school, there was a gun range that it was there since the dawn of time. It actually the Army actually built the school and they actually put the range in there. There was a gun range below the school. So, I mean, we'd go there every Tuesday night and we did shooting with the 22s. Like we had anchors and stuff like this. We'd go do target shooting with those. We did that every Tuesday night when I was in cadets and stuff. So there was a lot of firearm training there through cadets and everything like that. The first time I ever shot anything.
And this is all up in Whitehorse?
Yeah, this is all in Whitehorse. Yeah. I mean, and when I say, because a lot of people, I mean, the gun range was locally below the school. Which if you say that to anybody, they're like, wow, why would there be a gun range in a school?
Well, no, I'm just gonna play with you here a sec. Not anybody. In fact, yeah, a lot of all over the country, including downtown Toronto, like a lot of schools have a gun range, usually often in the basement. And even though it hasn't been used for a few decades, it was there, and because shooting still is a huge part of Canadian culture, very mainstream culture. But at the time, it was it was before the days when, oh my God, a gun! It was back in the days when we accepted that having firearms and ammunition and being proficient in their use was just part of what it meant to be a person in this country. Like it's perfectly normal.
Well, and
a lot of schools have ranges.
And being in cadets and stuff, it was, I mean, I tell you, I could have spent Tuesday night getting myself into trouble, or I could have spent Tuesday night at the range. So every Tuesday night we had range, every Wednesday night we had cadets. It was it was a good way to keep kids active, and it taught them a lot of safety stuff. So at least that way, if they came across something, they knew what to
Yeah.
do.
Well, safety and coordination and camaraderie and respect and discipline, and like there's a lot of rules to follow. And yeah, I wanted to come back to CATF. How many do you give the number of subscribers?
Roughly, we got a readership of about 17 to 25,000, depending on the month. That's the readership we have right now.
And that's the number of mailouts, or there's that formula that people use. They have like a 1.17. Every issue reaches this many eyeballs.
Essentially, yeah. So that's
Okay.
the readership we use.
Okay, so I'm going to guess based on those numbers, that's a huge number. So you got a fairly good mix between the advertisers in terms of income, between the advertisers and the subscribers.
Yes.
Awesome. That's very good. And what are you seeing? I want to ask you, like, in terms of what you're seeing in terms of business trend, or what the readership is interested in, or is the product mix changing that you've seen over the years, whether it's restricted versus, well, I should say restricted versus non-restricted firearms? That means more rifles and shotguns versus handguns, or are your subscribers getting older, younger? Is there anything you can say about what you're seeing in?
Well, I mean, as the old subscribers, I mean, we've got old subscribers, we've got new subscribers, like young people. The trends have changed a bit. I mean, you definitely got a lot more, synthetic stocks. You've got a lot more guys interested in the tactical stuff. I think a firearms collector goes through different stages when he's collecting firearms. When I started out, I wanted all the tactical stuff, and that was awesome and great stuff. And I started out there, and I still have some of that stuff today. But then I like I said, I collect military stuff. So then I moved into that, and it was like the M1 Grands, your M1 carbines, all that kind of stuff. And then as you're moving around this, oh yeah, but World War I is where the stuff is. Now you got bolt action, this, so I think as you collect firearms, you actually evolve as you're going around, and then as you're evolving, you're changing your stuff, that what you like. So I mean, the trends, as a young person, they get into it, they want the latest and greatest. It's got to have the optic sight, it's got to have the this synthetic stock, and I want this. And as the old guys are like, well, I want wood, and I want this, and I want that. So it's the trends kind of go that way. Basically in the paper, have I seen a real trend that way? I mean, it's there, but it's not. It's kind of tough to put my finger on it. What I'm trying to say, it's
because what I've heard from other guys and stuff is that over the past few years, when the current government, we're doing this interview on the 25th of February 2022, Justin Trudeau is prime minister, that for years he's been promising to crack down on gun owners. So what I've been hearing from people in the industry is there's less interest in handguns, less interest in so-called restricted rifles, and now they're mostly prohibited, more trend to small caliber 22 and shotguns and bolt action rifles, like stuff from, essentially, instead of moving towards the modern stuff, we're actually moving towards the stuff from 2 centuries ago, in terms of firearm design.
Talking to a lot of the guys that are running the PAL programs, they're finding a big increase of, obviously, people who want to have their firearms license, but they're also finding a big increase of people who want the restricted side of the firearms license.
Interesting.
So I guess if you're looking at a trend that way, we are seeing more people wanting to get into it. It seems on both sides, like both your non-restricted and your restricted side. People are wanting to get that way more. So I guess we've got a trend going that way.
Do you have a lot of ads for handguns? And restricted is today the quote unquote restricted classification is essentially mostly handguns. Do you have a lot of handgun ads in the paper?
I do got a lot of handgun ads. There are a lot of people selling handguns, definitely.
Uh,
Now,
I hope there's a lot of people buying handguns too, because
that's what I'm hoping. I mean, is it because of what he's saying? Is that why I'm seeing a big high in handgun ads? They seem to be about the same as when I started till now. So I don't think this has anything to do with it. But we do have a lot of guys selling handguns back and forth. Looking for stuff, wanting to buy, also selling.
I had Wes Winkle on a couple of weeks ago. He was the president of the Canadian Sporting Arms Association, the Firearm Trade Association, as well as the owner of Elwood Epps Sporting Goods, a big independent gun store. And he said all that also, that yeah, he's seeing at the moment people are getting rid of their handguns in case of a mass prohibition.
Okay, because I mean, and again, you've got people. Yeah, see, here in the Yukon, we're not as concerned maybe as the rest of the country. I mean, we've got, because he's put that ban to being, he's allowing the provinces or the territories to do that ban themselves. He's not doing it himself. He's allowing the provinces to do it. Now, here in the Yukon, would they do something like that? Would they actually ban handguns? I don't think they would here, but you might see somebody, because we know the mayor of Vancouver has been talking about it. We know places in Quebec have been talking about it. One of my people that actually do advertise, one thing I did notice is that there was a lot of Glocks that was coming out, and that was in the Quebec area. So I can understand those people get a little more afraid and maybe wanting to sell some of their stuff or trying to get rid of their stuff. But we don't know exactly where all this is going to end up. We don't know if the provinces are physically going to do this. How are they going to do it? No one has come up with how they're going to do it. I mean, if Vancouver decided to ban handguns, but Delta didn't, well, they're two different places, and Buddy's range is a mission. How is he supposed to go from point A to point B?
Oh, none of this makes any sense. But I would just say that everybody who has said, "Oh, it'll never happen here," has been wrong, because it's happening here, and it's happening.
Yeah,
Unless we change things, it's going to happen everywhere.
and it's all it's going to take is a few provinces or something to happen. I'm hoping that things don't get that far. I really hope
Yeah.
that. I mean, if we take a look at this gun ban that's supposed to happen down at May 1st, they haven't come up with anything. They haven't come up with a way for us to where we're going to bring our stuff to. They haven't come up with a way how they're gonna facilitate anything. They haven't come up with storage options. They haven't come up with a buyback program yet. They haven't come up with anything.
When you say buyback, you mean confiscation.
Confiscation.
Yeah.
We'll use that term. I like that term. So they haven't come up with anything at this stage of the game. So consensus is right now that that's probably going to be pushed back.
Well, I'm going to go on the record here saying there's the plan for mass confiscation by April 30th. That has failed. That horse has left the barn.
It's totally failed. So
do your customers and advertisers, is that something that comes up a lot in your conversations?
Yeah, consensus with them too as well, that it's not going to happen. So they're going to have to force it back with everything that he's been dealing with. Justine, I don't think he can make it happen. So
it won't. It can't. I mean, it's not going to.
It physically can't, and you can't tell somebody, okay, yeah, we're just gonna take your stuff and we're gonna pay you later. That's just not going to happen.
Or not pay you at all, because they don't know how to do it. So that's obviously beyond our thing. But it's interesting that everyone I talk to, that's a huge topic of conversation and a huge topic of concern, and insert the word frustration, disappointment, anger, blah blah blah. But I get the impression that from looking through your paper that it's a lot of also non-restricteds. And I hear there's a lot of people who own so-called non-restricted firearms who want prohibition of what they think they don't own. So there's a lot of it's interesting that you're getting that too. Maybe that's also because of your own personal philosophy on the topic.
Well, that could be. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, it doesn't matter what you shoot, providing you follow the law, you do it safely, and you follow all your range rules. It doesn't matter what you shoot. It doesn't matter shoot if you black powder, full auto, handgun, whatever. It doesn't matter as long as you're doing it safely, responsibly, and following your range, the rules at your range. It doesn't matter what you shoot. It's the same thing as a car. I mean, they expect us when you get your car. They say that a PAL is a privilege.
PAL is
Well,
a firearm possession and acquisition license.
yes, they say that that's a privilege. So is your driver's license a privilege. And when they give you a driver's license to you, they expect you to follow the rules of the road. They expect you to stop at stop signs, go slow in school zones, to abide the speed limits and stuff. And every car out there that's produced will go over the speed limit. I mean, in Canada, the speed limit is 100 to 110 on any given highway. Well, your car that you have today is going to do 200K easy. But they expect you to follow the rules of the road. They give you that responsibility. And if you do not follow those rules, you pay the ultimate price. You're the one. You're the one that pays the fine. You're the one that loses your license. You get caught drunk driving. You're the one that pays everything. In the firearms world, it seems to be different. If somebody does something wrong, it's the entire firearms community that pays for it. I've done nothing wrong.
Collective punishment thing.
Collective punishment. You've done nothing wrong. I mean, so like I said, it doesn't matter what you shoot. If you follow any rules of your range and all the rules that you're supposed to have, it doesn't matter what I shoot. If I do it in a legal manner, it shouldn't matter what I shoot, and I should not have anything done to me if somebody over here did something wrong. It's not my fault that guy did something wrong. It's his fault. He pays, not me.
And I think that's also what I'm getting here is it's interesting. This came up with other conversations as well, whether it was with Wes Winkle a couple of weeks ago or the CEO of Beretta Canada, Stoeger Canada, Spiros Crisso, who in December. We all noticed this thing that we want solidarity in the gun community, that a gun is a gun is a gun, and it doesn't matter if you shoot a big gun, a small gun, a long gun, a short gun. A gun is a gun is a gun, and we can all stand together on that. And what really frustrates us is when people who own one type of gun think they're better than people who own another type of gun, or somehow their gun is legitimate and someone else's firearm is illegitimate. That division and that we are all, I think, frustrated by that divisiveness and hostility within our own, like we are our own worst enemy. We are our own worst enemy when we get into that mine good, yours bad.
I've seen that every from the very first time I had my PAL, my FAC back in the day. I've noticed that. You've got inside our group, inside our community, we got our own little groups, right? You've got the guys that shoot skeet, you got the guys that shoot black powder, the guys that shoot this, the guys that shoot that. And you're absolutely right. Back in the day, none of those groups stood up for each other. I mean, the guy who shot black powder could really care what happened to the guy that shot a handgun. He was still shooting the black powder. The skeet guy said, well, I don't care about any of you guys. I'm shooting my shotgun and skeet. And it's been that way for a long, long time. Now, what I did notice is that when the ban came out, I did notice that it kind of seemed that it was starting to pull the groups together more, because when the ban before the ban, they were talking about banning the AR-15. Right. And I was at a friend's shop just prior to the election, and he owns an AR-15. I own an AR-15. So we're talking, obviously we know which way we're going to vote. And one of his customers came up and joined us in the conversation. And I said, hey, what way you voting? And he said, got no option, voting Liberal. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to convince you. You've already said you're voting Liberal. So obviously, to me, you're not a hunter, you're not a shooter, you're not, and I'm saying, fine. If that's the way you want to vote, I'm fine with that. So as the conversation goes on, he's still joining in, and I find out through the conversation he's a hunter, he owns firearms, and straight out of his mouth he goes, I feel people shouldn't own AR-15, I feel people shouldn't own handguns, and I know the current government is not going to take my firearms away. Well, when the May 1st ban hit, I phoned up my buddy and I said, make sure you phone him and tell him it did. Because when the ban came out, it not only affected the AR-15, and all the ones that were on that ban list, it also affected the 460 Weatherby Magnum, which in my neck of the woods, a lot of guys up here use that to hunt bison with.
It's a big hunting caliber.
It's a big hunting caliber. Now, granted, whatever you shoot with that, you're going to get just as much on the back end because it's a huge round. But guys up here were using that for hunting. So when they came out and they said, well, we're not going to affect hunting rifles, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that, they left that thing so open-ended, that it was like, okay. Yeah. And hearing that, and again, frustrated with everything else, hearing that from that guy in that day, I tried to talk to him for 10 minutes and I had to leave. It was game over, but after the ban was brought out, I started to see some of those groups are starting to come together because they started realizing, like, oh, they are coming after my stuff too now. Whereas back in the day, it was always they were hitting the guys with the handguns, they're hitting the guys that were in the tactical stuff. They, and nobody looked at us. None of the groups said, well, we're all shooters. Let's start sticking up for all of us because we all do the same sport. It doesn't matter whether I shoot this, that, the A, B, or C. We're all shooters. They were like, no, well, we're not going to stick up for these guys because they're not touching us over here. But when the ban came out, because the way the whole thing was worded, the way everything was going on, the way they came out with a tweet and an article and a this and a that saying they weren't going to do anything about the 12 and 10 gauge shotguns. Well, that's today. They're not. What's going to happen tomorrow? So
and some people get it also. Some people, one of my good contacts is he doesn't. I think he owns. Let me rephrase this. His favorite hunting firearm, or his favorite firearm, is a break open single shot Blaser. I think, gosh, I always get it wrong. I think it's the K1 or the R1. And he's not an AR-15 guy by any means, but he understands exactly what you're saying. So not all the quote unquote big game hunters are clueless and don't get it. Many do get it, and I think what's happened over the past couple of years, they get it, and they're understanding that the politics of it and the policy and the shenanigans and the dishonesty and that's one of the good things about the past couple of years. I think it's woken a lot of people up about that. I'll call it the shenanigans, the political shenanigans around this issue.
It has, and it started, like I said, it started bringing those groups together more. And don't get me wrong, I mean, in our groups, we had people that understood this right from the beginning of time, but then we had some that didn't, and it's starting to bring those people in more. I saw that. I also saw that when they did that, people now all of a sudden where people had the option of maybe getting a PAL or had the option of buying this or buying that, they're like, oh, they're going to take my options away. So now those people started getting more involved, and they started saying, oh, I better go get my PAL, or I better get this, or, because it's, so it seemed to me it started bringing people in more together. Now, hopefully the trend sticks, because again, most of the people I talk to, I mean, like you, we're always talking to the same side of the fence. I've very rarely do I actually talk to a person that doesn't own firearms or doesn't have a PAL. It's very rarely. I mean, it might be, it may be because the person that's giving me their ad material, they've had it designed by another designer or something, and that designer doesn't have anything. And that's about my only interaction of somebody that may not have a firearms license or a firearm or anything. So, I mean, it's very rarely that I don't talk to somebody who or talk to anybody who doesn't have a firearm or a firearms license, and you must find it the same way. I mean, everybody that you talk to, and it's nature of the beast. It's because of what we do.
Yeah, well, it's very similar. It's funny, as publishers, I guess it's very similar. When I work with people who are in marketing or branding or communications, a lot of them, well, I remember last year I had this journey, the team working on a marketing campaign were anti-gun. They come to my website, TheGunBlog.ca, and they start educating themselves about gun facts and stats. And they ended up kind of that transformation that you're talking about. Oh my God, let's get our gun license. This sounds really awesome and important and fun and good people. And so they went from being anti-gun to, I'm going to say, being pro-gun.
Yep.
That's
I mean, in the gun world, there's many different sports out there. And, I mean, I play baseball in the summer. I do some other stuff. I mean, there's many different sports out there, but, most of the sports, when you go to them and go play, most of the sports, there's always a cooler full of beer. There's this, that, the other deal. Firearm sports are one of the very few sports out there where you don't see a drop of anything. It's got to be one of the safest sports out there because of everything that all the checks and balances we do to make something happen. I mean, you can go there, you can have a good time, you're going to be safe. There's going to be nothing going on. Everybody's having a great. Do you know what I mean?
We self censor or self police, or we're the best ambassadors for the. Well, we know, I guess, we're an endangered species, so we take extra care to be responsible and I'm going to say clean.
And clean, because at the end, if something should go wrong, we pay the price for it, and they're going to come take our stuff.
Yeah, we're the people who have the most to lose.
We're the people that have the most to lose. So we make sure that everything is perfect. I mean, when you go to a gun show, I mean, everybody there, have you ever seen anything go? I mean, my gun show, I've never had anything go missing at all. Nothing. And
Right.
that's everybody is watching because everybody knows that, everybody watches.
It's
It's one of those
good
things.
people. It's honest. There's some bad apples. Let's not get it wrong, but there's predominantly good people, well-intentioned people you want to have as your neighbor, as a member of your community.
Exactly.
Hey, what do you wish? I don't know this kind of. What do you wish people, whether advertisers, subscribers, the public, what do you wish they understood better about Canadian access to firearms? What do people often get wrong or not understand about, whether it's the mission, the workflow, the structure?
I guess that the only one thing is, I guess, a lot of people understand is sometimes it's not just the click of a button to change something. I'll take ads and ad material. I mean, we go to the printer on the 11th, normally on every month. I mean, if I know you're coming in, I'll take your ad like right on D-Day. I mean, I just because I want to get you in. But it just is, if you're making, it's not just a matter of simply pushing a button to make a change. It takes a little bit of time. Because normally when that deadline hits, when we're in that last few days of the week, I mean, that's a pretty sleepless week. That's a pretty sleepless 4 days for us at that stage of the game.
Because it's you're doing layouts. And on that point, have you thought of going to a digital product? I know right now you're paper and paper only.
Yeah,
People can there's the website is canadianguns.com, and people can subscribe even for a free trial if they're interested.
yeah.
But it's paper only. Any plans to go digital?
Paul had thought at one point in time of going digital, and we had talked about it when I came on board of maybe doing a digital stuff. It's one of those things I'm just not ready to turn the key to yet. Once you've turned that key, you can't go back. Um, you know, when he started out in paper form, it's a very good way to hit the niche market that you're trying to hit. You're hitting that specific person who actually wants your information, which is it's very good. You know, it's a different way. It's a different form of advertising. Everybody out there nowadays has a website. Everybody's got a website. It's a different form of advertising. You're reaching a different. You're reaching the people that actually want the products. So I haven't really. I was really concerned when the COVID-19 hit. I wasn't too sure what was going to happen, how they were determining what was essential service, what was non-essential service. On paper form only. If they didn't deem printing as an essential service at that point, I would have turned the key right then and said, okay, no, I've got no option. I have to go digital. I have to get my information out to my clients. That's what I have to do. That's my job. Somebody put it on the paper. It's my job to make sure that people read it. It's the same thing as if you say you want to add to my paper, it's my job to get the material from you, and I'll do whatever it takes to get the material. If I got to phone you 10 o'clock at night to get your material, I'll phone you 10 o'clock at night. I'll do whatever it takes. And going with that, I'll do whatever it takes to get the paper out for people to read your ad. I'll do whatever it takes. And so at that stage, I was thinking about doing it. And I did look at a few companies and stuff, but they deemed printing as an essential service. That really worried me. They deemed it as an essential service. So I was cleared. I thought, okay, great, excellent. And I mean, the first couple months of COVID-19, the mailing was a bit slow, but it still got out there. Everything still went good. But it's just one of those things. I'm not, and same thing with Paul. I mean, he was not, he was didn't want to turn that key either. And I'm not, I don't know if I want to turn that key yet.
Got
Uh,
it. And I just
so
want to provide some context here, also relating to the timeline and also to what you're saying, that when you have a digital product, let's say it's a one-man show. Let's pretend, like in my case,
yep,
I go to a computer, I hit publish, and it's published and it's online. Seconds later, and I can email it minutes or hours later, or then whatever. I can email it anytime. In your case, that doesn't work that way. Once the digital copy is finished, you send it to the printers. It has to get printed and then put in envelopes and then taken to the post office and then mailed. Like, it's a much longer. You have your publishing schedule, but it's a much longer process that involves, pardon me, that involves a lot more people. So
yep.
if there's COVID shutdowns, it's not like just, no, you can do this from your basement. No, you depend on a whole supply chain.
Yeah, there's a whole supply chain in the background to make it all happen. Exactly. And I mean, once you hit that, okay, yeah, let's print this bad boy. I mean, it's done.
That's when that's a whole other part of the workflow begins.
And then from there, I mean, and it takes them, now it takes them, talking to them, it takes them roughly about a day and a bit just to print the paper now, because again, we've grown it to a bigger size. So it takes them actually about a day and a bit to print it. Hopefully I'm actually going to get a tour of my printer in March, because I'm going down for the Chilliwack Gun Show, which is 19th and 20th of March. And my printer happens to be in Vancouver. So hopefully I'm actually going to finally get to take a tour of where they print it and actually get a better idea what they do. Because I know there's a whole background, and I mean, I gotta say those, Web Express has been an absolute dream to work with. Paul had them right from the start. Byron and the crew down there are a great bunch of guys to work with, and I mean, I know I phone them up at the last minute. Hey, wait, no, we spotted something. Can you hang on just a second? Don't print it quite yet. Or, they've done nothing but good. I mean, I can say nothing but good about them. And, so I understand when I'm phoning them to say, oh shit, I need to hold off for a second. It's the same thing when a client comes into me and the client says, oh, can you, yes, look, I need 5 more minutes to get this thing done, so it kind of, passes down the line a bit there. But
yes, it's yeah. No, it's interesting. It's interesting that again you're sharing the message that even though it's a newspaper, you're creating jobs across the country, and it's technically not the firearm industry, it's the publishing industry, but it's related to firearms. These are jobs, these are people's incomes, and the personal relationships that you've maintained for you and your predecessor Paul have maintained for decades.
Oh, exactly. Like, I mean, I still use the same printer he does. I still talk to the same people he did. I mean, a lot of the advertisers that we've lost a few over the course of the time. I mean, just because they've retired and stuff. I've still got advertisers that advertised with Paul from day one in the paper.
Incredible. Anybody that would be appropriate to name?
Like Gobbles Firearms, Londero have been in there for a long time. Dante's been in there since, as far as I know, since Paul started.
And do they have they always, from memory, they always get page 2? Is that
page 2 and 3? When
page
they
2 and 3, okay.
Page 2 and 3. If they do one ad, then they get page 2. This particular March issue, because that issue we actually ran about Paul in there. Paul got page 2 and they got page 3.
Well, also, just to let you know, some of the people you've mentioned are also my readers, my subscribers, my supporters, and I'm looking forward to having some of those names on screen with me for a conversation, just like we're doing.
Oh no, I mean, a lot of those guys, like I said, they've been advertising with us since day one. So, and that was one thing when I did get the paper. That was one thing I did have to look at doing, and that's why the paper did increase. Paul had his subscriber base. His subscriber base were at a point of they were going to retire too. They had been there since day one. And those guys, those guys they're awesome guys. They're great, but they're coming. People are retiring. They're selling their businesses off. They're doing what they, it's good. They're moving out as the young guys move in. It's the same thing what's happening here. I mean, our guys that used to be at the top of the firearm community are moving out for whatever reason, and people like you and me and Dan and we're moving those steps up. It just it's nature of the beast. It's got to have to happen. So I knew that I was going to have to build another advertiser base to fill that gap, to fill those people. And in the process of doing it, we filled more pages. So,
it's a nice problem to have.
Yeah, it's a nice problem to have.
What has surprised you most since today versus when you took over the paper? Either the happy surprise or the unpleasant surprise.
No, I've been nothing but happily surprised every day I work on the paper.
Wow.
I've always been surprised at what's going on. I mean, when I walked into it, I didn't know what to expect. I really honestly didn't. I mean, me and Paul talked about it for years. Don't get me wrong. I've been around it for a long time. But I didn't know what to expect. So I was when I walked into it, everybody was very happy to talk. Everybody was, and even so, they didn't know that I took over at that point. They you know, I was just some guy on the phone. You know, they figured I was maybe the helper for Paul or whatever the case may be. Everybody was more than friendly to talk to you, and it was such a nice feeling to get into something that you're actually doing, that people, you know, that people want to talk to you. People want to hear what you have to say. You know, they're more than happy to give you a phone call and get their subscription, and they're more than happy to bring in your material for their ads and stuff. You know, and it's just that whole happy feeling of being in that kind of areas. It's just been great. I mean, you know, I'm a mechanic by trade, and when you're talking to your customer on that end of this, you know, he brings his car in to you to get fixed, and you say, "Oh yeah, look, I'm sorry, sir, you're gonna need $2,000 worth to drive your car." Well, you know, it's not a happy feeling. Nobody's happy, but yet, you know, if you worked in a performance shop, the guy's more than happy to give you the cash to make that car go faster, because that's what he wanted to do. He didn't want to fix his you know, his Hyundai because he broke the timing belt, but he wanted to put that blower on that Mustang because he wanted to go faster. You know, and it's the same thing here. People are more than happy to deal with you. It's just such a it's a nice industry to be in. It's nice. It's just everybody's happy to talk. Everybody's happy to be with you. You know, it's just great. It just, and every day I just, you know, I love it every day. You know, I just, like I said, I enjoy talking to the subscribers. I enjoy talking to the advertisers. You know, it's just something I enjoy to do.
So I'm going to say also that part of this, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that part of this is possibly you, that what you bring to it, you with your energy, your enthusiasm, your smile, your kindness, your attitude, I'm going to say that the reason you experience it that way is because that's what you bring to it.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that, man. You know, I mean, you know, it's tough to get a read on a person when you're just talking to them on the phone. I mean, a lot of these people that I have, I've never physically met in person.
Yeah.
You know, some people I've only met on the internet. I've only corresponded, or I maybe talked to once or twice. You know, so I try to make sure I get phoning everybody so that, you know, they understand. But it's like I said, I just enjoy it. It's just, you know, it can tie you up because sometimes I enjoy it too much. You know, I
Uh,
mean, I get in a conversation. I mean, there's one of my subscribers. He phones me just about either every Thursday or Friday, just to give me his weekly rant, and we chat for half hour, 45 minutes, and have a great time doing it. I mean, and it's one of those things. It doesn't matter where I'm at in my day. I'll make time for that. You know, if it means, okay, I'll just do a little bit more work at home. Well, that doesn't bother me because I enjoyed the conversation that we had. You know.
Interesting.
I mean, I just really enjoy it.
Well, Donovan, I'm enjoying this, and there's so much I could ask you. I'd like to ask you for possibly for a future show, but for today, I'd like to wrap up. And just before I do, is there anything you want to come back on, or clarify, or update
You know,
just before we close out?
like I said, when Paul got into the farms into the farms world back in the day, I mean, we didn't have, you know, there was a lot of stuff that we didn't have that him and a crew of people brought to the forefront to firearms owners' attentions of what was going on and where things are going. And I mean, without him being a part of that, or just give me a second here, please.
Yeah, take your time.
Without him being a part of that, or him making the paper, like I said, I wouldn't be where I am today. I mean, it just, and just on a personal note, like just from day one up to now, you know, you know, it was really, you know, I mean, he really put a big influence out there of where we should be as firearms owners. You know, I'm hoping that people see that the stuff that goes on is not right, and that we need to stand up against this, and we need to go forward in it, and hopefully everybody does come together and understand that a gun is a gun is a gun, that we should all go have fun. I think, you know, hopefully that's what happens. But other than that, I just, like I said, I just enjoy talking to everybody and enjoy the paper.
Donovan, I'm gonna say that's a beautiful way to end. And again, my respects to Paul, and what a lovely way to end this conversation by coming back to one of his important messages that he shared with all the people that he came into contact with.
No, exactly. And anybody who knew him, anybody had a chance to talk to him, definitely bettered their lives.
Donovan, I'm going to thank, just before I close out, thank you. I'm going to thank the subscribers of the TheGunBlog.ca, subscribers and donors. I don't have advertisers because I don't run any ads, but I thank my subscribers and supporters and donors for making my work possible and making this possible. And Donovan, I want to thank you for having walked me through and helped me get to know you and your work, and shared all of this with me as publisher of Canadian Access to Firearms.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, and we should do this again.
I'm looking forward to it.